Good morning. This is Ann Samuelson, your host for What's Your Story here on 94.9 FM, 840 AM, and podcast on northcoastoregon.com. Today, my guest is Rob Cornilles. Rob is running for Congress, and and he keeps showing up in our community. So when he asks to be on the radio, I show up early in the morning to be here.
Hi, Rob.
And Happy Chappy was a little late this morning, but we're forgiving him for that. Anyway, Rob, can you talk a little bit about your campaign, and then we want to talk about some key issues. And I know jobs, as my mother says, JOBSs are a big deal, and we all need more of those. So if you could share with us where your campaign's going, how you're feeling about it, and what your hopes are.
Well, thank you, Ann. I would tell you that it's going very well, and especially here on the North Coast. That's why I again wanted to come and visit, not only with you, but also to visit with members of the Chamber here in Seaside and other businesses and community organizations. We're sensing and we're seeing tremendous momentum right now, and I think that's apparent because quite frankly, the other side is coming at us hard, spending a lot of money to try to go negative and put up attack ads, and that's just business as usual. And I think that the voters are increasingly growing tired of that. So our message of let's put aside partisan politics. Let's talk about real solutions for job creation in Northwest Oregon. What are we going to do on a federal level so that we can help people on the local level do what they do best, and that is, build things, innovate, provide great services, grow our communities, produce more job opportunities for people here, not only those who are here now, but those who would perhaps like to come to the North Coast and be a part of the community here and set up their own family and even retire here. But there has to be opportunity, and that's what this campaign's about.
So one of the things I want to touch on, and one of the things I really respect about your campaign, Rob, is you haven't gone negative at all. But you do say what the truth is. And the truth is the National Democratic Party has put $1 million into your opponent's campaign. Now, that didn't come from Clatsop County.
No.
That didn't come from my neighborhood. And that just kind of paralyzes me when I think about it. I think who's running that big machine, and talk about bought and sold.
Well, it is an unfortunate part of what's going on in this campaign right now, especially that they would unleash, in the month of December alone, $500,000 of negative attack ads against me, trying to discredit this small businessman from Tualatin, Oregon, and do it during the holiday season, no less. It's obviously a sign of desperation, of nervousness. They're scared because our message is resonating when we're talking about jobs and what creates jobs, what provides job creation. I don't think my opponent really knows how to talk about job creation because she's never done it. She's never had the opportunity to meet a payroll like I have. She's never had the opportunity to sign the front of a check like I have. And as you know, Ann, I've owned my own company for 16 years, one that my wife and I started out of a spare bedroom in our home. We've been able to employ 60 people in that time. We've been also able, through our services that we provide at our firm, to provide job opportunities for hundreds of people around the country, and launching those jobs with those careers with these individuals. And so when it comes to the issue of the day, I know a little bit whereof I speak. And because my opponent, really, when you ask her about how to create jobs, it's almost kind of deer in the headlights. So obviously they want to change the subject. And they're doing some pretty nasty things right now to try to discredit our campaign and distract voters. Hopefully voters, though, are seeing through it, and they're recognizing we're not going to let Washington, D.C. and the political elite determine the future here in Northwest Oregon.
So I have a simple question for you, Rob. If you were our congressman, do you think we need more rules?
No, I think we need to unleash the rules right now that are, frankly, strangling job creation. And I have total trust in Oregonians that if you give them opportunities, if you give them a path, if you will, to kind of create their own future, they'll be responsible to themselves, to their neighbors, to their environment, to their communities, their schools. But if we continue to look to 2,500 miles away for our answers, which again is kind of the solution that my opponent talks about, rather than saying, you know what, we don't need Big Brother looking over our shoulder anymore. It is strangling, as I say, even handcuffing our ability to grow this economy. That's the way I look at it. As a small business owner, granted, you need government services, you need good roads, you need transportation, you need reliable, affordable energy to move a business, to move it forward. But you also need the government to recognize that the free market works. It's served our country well over the years. That's how Oregon was built, was that we had enterprising people who came here, very innovative, very creative and inventive. And they weren't looking over their shoulder at Washington, D.C. saying, can you help us out here? Or what other rules can you write for us? And we need to return to that. And Oregonians deserve that. And I think it would be awfully nice to have a business-friendly representative in the first congressional seat, because we haven't had that for years.
Well, and another thing that I hear you saying, because I've seen you so connected in this community now for several years. I mean, you're not just showing up because you want to win an election. You actually care about the people that are here. I've seen you at logger safety dinners. You're attending our Seaside Chamber breakfast this morning. I mean, you connect on a sincere level, and you've got great listening skills. And what I'm concerned about is we have multi-generational families here that have had businesses, whether they're fishing fleets or logging businesses and in the timber industry. And you have some of those folks that are advising their kids, don't go there.
Yeah.
Now, isn't that scary?
Yeah, it really is. I mean, especially on the North Coast, we have intergenerational businesses here and industries. And you mentioned loggers. I've met so many loggers who are third and fourth generation. Those who run and operate and work at fisheries, same story. In the agricultural business as a whole. And it is a very, very sad commentary on where we're at as a state, and I think increasingly as a country, where adults, grown-ups, are saying to their kids, you know what, we're not really sure about what your future is going to look like. In other words, go elsewhere. Go elsewhere and find opportunity. There isn't much here for you anymore. And I have 3 sons, as you know, Ann, 2 of them in college right now, 1 in high school. My wife and I are very concerned. We're very concerned that Oregon, when they are ready to start their careers, is not going to be the same place as it was for us 16 years ago when we decided to launch a company. And my boys may never be, entrepreneurial like I was. They may not ever want to start their own enterprise, but they want to work for a reliable company or a small firm or work in a store, whatever it is. But if there really isn't a growing economy here, then we're going to lose them. We're going to lose them to the Nevadas or the Utahs or the Texas or whoever around the country. We have so many great assets in this state. Here on the Pacific Rim, we have, we have trade partners just within our ports here in Astoria, in St. Helens, certainly in Portland. We're the envy of districts all over the country. Not to mention our natural resources, the timber industry, as you mentioned, the agricultural community, the high tech sector. We have all of these great assets, and we're not using them. We're not fully maximizing our potential here. And as a small business owner, you learn every single day you have to capitalize on opportunities, responsibly, mind you, but you have to capitalize on those responsibilities, and that produces growth and prosperity. And when government doesn't allow us to do that here in our home state, we see the situation we're in right now with 15 straight years above the national average in unemployment.
So when there's these sectors, there's the federal government, there's the state government, and there's local governments. And what I've seen some of the time, in my experience, is these governments operate in silos. And so what I need to know from you is how are you going to operate with state and local governments? I mean, what's your relationship going to be, or how important do you think that is?
No, that's a great point. There has to be a collaborative effort. The federal government cannot come into any situation and say, city or county, this is what you're going to have to do. And you have to have those relationships early in the game. So this is why I began early when I announced my candidacy to go to the mayors of this district and talk to them and say, if I didn't have a relationship with them previously, here's who I am, here's my background, here's why meeting with you is so important to me, because if the voters are good enough to put me in this seat, I want you to view me as a partner. And as you know, I think, Ann, I have 20 mayors within the district who have already endorsed me. And these are not just Republican mayors. These are Democrat, independents, and Republicans. Now, why have they done that? Why have some of them stepped out of the comfort zone of just looking at people within their own party and say, Rob Cornilles is the guy that we really want to work with? Because they recognize that I do have the skill set. I do have the background to help them in job creation, as opposed to the other alternative. And so these relationships are very key to me, not only on the city level, but also the county level. I'm very grateful that, mayors like Mayor Larson and Mayor Aquila here on the North Coast are so supportive of me and helpful to me. And I also have working relationships with the other mayors, too, who haven't endorsed anyone yet. But I think that when I get elected, they're going to immediately recognize this is a guy that really cares about North Coast issues. And this is why I've said before, even on your program, when Rob Cornilles is in Congress, we're going to have a North Coast presence. We're going to have an office here set up for my congressional office, because your issues are important here. They're important to the overall success and health of the 1st District.
So you're making a commitment to have an office here on the North Coast?
Absolutely.
For real?
We haven't had one. And we see frankly some of the consequences of that. Not only do people feel disenfranchised from their congressional representation, but I don't think the congressional representative we had in the past or the person that I'm competing with now for this seat really understands these issues. I think they're too isolated. They're in a bubble, frankly, in Portland. And Portland's different than the North Coast. I get that. I don't come from the city of Portland. I come from the suburbs myself. And so it's a very eclectic district. There's a lot of concerns here within Northwest Oregon, but the North Coast issues are unique. They're challenging. There's no easy solutions to revitalizing the economy here, but they have to see that their congressman is one who will listen, who has people here on the ground working with them to serve their interests as best we can, and to eventually work together.
So something I want to touch on, because I don't ever want to leave her out, because she impresses me so much. Allison, your better half.
Yeah.
I'll call her that. I'm safe doing that, aren't I?
Absolutely.
She's standing right next to you, and I had the honor of introducing her at your campaign kickoff, and what an honor it was. And I want to touch on what it really takes to do this. And you've got to have somebody like that right there. You
do. I mean, Allison and I, we've been married over 25 years. We were high school sweethearts in Yamhill County when we went to Newburgh High School together. And we started our business together. We've been very involved in our community together, serving our schools in the Tiger 12th School District, where our kids have always gone to school. Allison is sacrificing a lot. Obviously, your privacy is jeopardized when you run for office. We get that. The negative attacks that are coming against me, the barrage of ads and other things, and you mentioned our campaign has not, we're not doing any negative ads. We're just talking straight with the voters about job creation. But for her and even my kids to have to see that stuff when they know that almost everything that's said is untrue about me, even when they read in the media things about me that they know are not true, that are either fabricated or mischaracterized, or just half-truths, it's disconcerting to a family. It's a challenge. But I want to also point out, as much concern as I have for my wife to make sure that that we continue to work together on this, and I have her full support and partnership. I also tell you, though, I've got employees at my company who are also being brought into the ugliness of politics. The other side, and there's evidence of this, we've got hard evidence of this, the other side has actually called my office, tried to speak to every one of my employees, and tried to dig up something that they can use against me in this campaign. My private business should be off limits as far as my employees go. They didn't ask for me to run for Congress. They didn't ask to be distracted from their work. certainly I'm out of the business right now for the most part because I'm running full-time for Congress. That affects them. That affects their own ability to be successful when I'm not around. And on top of that, we have the opposition calling and harassing my employees, taking them off their game, preventing them from servicing our clients and customers. That's just beyond the pale. And I hope that voters will recognize that, if you want to see more of that kind of stuff in politics, then go ahead and reward it. Elect those people who are behind it. But if you're tired of it, if you don't think this is the way we ought to be electing our public officials, and certainly not the way we ought to be setting the example for future generations, then don't vote with the people that are behind that. Go a different route. Vote for someone, frankly, like me, who's not a politician, never been in office before, but just doing it because I think people like you and I, Ann, have to get off the proverbial couch and serve our communities.
So we're going to take a little break now, and we'll be back with Rob Cornilles, who's running for Congress for District 1. He's here visiting the North Coast today. We will be back really quick. Thanks. Morning, we're back here with Rob Cornilles, who's running for Congress for District 1. Rob, I want to just talk just a little bit. I don't want to become negative here, but the reality of the National Democratic Committee giving you $1 million, not you, but your opponent, sorry, I have a point with this. That's why I slipped and said that. It was a Freudian slip. And I understand Emily's List has given your opponent $800,000 this last week or so. That's what I'm hearing. So that's almost $2 million. So they must think you're worth it.
Yeah, I think that's, I guess it's a backhanded compliment, and I'll take it. I understand that, they did some polling. The Democrats did some polling not too long ago, and they didn't release the results of their poll, which usually says something. And what they did release is a barrage of negative ads against me. So, that's what I'm up against, but hey, I'm a big boy. I can take it. I know who I am. I know what I've done. I know the jobs that I've created here in Oregon. I know what it takes to create more jobs. I know what it takes to launch a small business and keep it going for 16 years. And so I'm going to stay focused on that. And hopefully, as I've mentioned earlier, hopefully the voters will recognize that we're tired of more of the same. We're tired of the political elite deciding our elections because they exercise this terrific influence through money that they have. And so that's kind of where we're at right now. But I'm going to stay very focused, and I've been very encouraged by the reaction people have given me to our message, to our advertising, and to our overall strategy.
I have a question for you, Rob. After
Happy Chappie's in the house.
I have a question. One of the things with working in radio, whenever we do political campaigns and stuff, we get political buys, and it's and of course you guys get the best rate that we possibly can put out there in our advertising, and it blitzes our airwaves, and we inundate our listeners with the messages and stuff that go out there. One of the past experiences I've had with a campaign person is well, what's your budget after the election? And it's a very good question, because my question that I want to say is if Rob Cornilles doesn't win this Congress position, what then? Because that's a follow-up question that a lot of people don't say. What is going to be your return if you should not win this election?
Are you speaking about any budget that was?
No. What are you going to do?
Oh, what am I personally going to do? Well, I haven't thought about that because I intend to win. The signs that we're seeing right now is that we're going to win this thing. It's not going to be easy. We're going to need your listeners' help. We're going to need volunteers. We're going to need resources. Again, I don't have the machine behind me. I'm a small business owner from Tualatin. So I need people to get on our website, which is cornillesforcongress.com, make a contribution, whether it's $10, $25, $50, whatever they can do. And just as importantly, if they can't provide resources, perhaps they can provide their valuable time, their energy. And get on our phone banks with us. In fact, we even have ways that people can participate in that even from their home. Or they can walk neighborhoods with me. There's a lot of things to be done, and we have to do it immediately because the election is upon us. People will be getting their ballots on January 14th.
So
I was just going to say, I think your commitment to an office down here, I know Portland, they think they have the hook, but there's been plenty of times that the North Coast has had a huge effect in what comes out with the election. So, having us in the backyard is if you're here and you're doing that job, I'll knock on your door.
Thank you.
So my other question is that I want to talk about, because it's not pretty to talk about, and it's this time of year when we look at needs in the community, and we've got in Clatsop County right now, I think we have the biggest food basket needs we've had that most people can remember, and the Toys for Tots programs, and I mean these volunteers are just bursting at the seams trying to meet all these needs.
Right.
And those are the people that are asking. There's a lot of people that don't ask. And it's my understanding from some of the data I've seen recently that Oregon's possibly number one for children that are, they now call it food insecure, which is a nice way of saying kids are hungry.
That's right. That's right. So
all of this has happened over time. And my concern is if your opponent is saying she wants job creation, she's been in a state seat. How did this happen?
It's a fair question, Ann.
I mean, how have we gotten here?
That's right. I mean, a kind of a rhetorical thing I like to say is that if we continue to think like we've always thought, we'll continue to get what we've always got. And right now in Oregon, that's not good. The fact that we are number one in the country in food insecurity for our children. 29% of them are going hungry. The fact that we continue to be above the national average in unemployment, 15 straight years. The fact that we're high on the charts as far as homelessness, poverty. These are issues where we have to look at what got us here, and I do believe elections have consequences. A lack of leadership, or sometimes the wrong leadership, has consequences. And I'm not suggesting that all people that are in elected office in Oregon, either now or in the past, are bad or have done a poor job. But I'm just saying I think we need some balance in Oregon right now. Just look at our congressional delegation. It's 6-1 in one party. Democrats have 6 members of Congress from Oregon. Republicans have 1. And it would be nice to have a little bit more balance, because I think that's what people want in Congress right now. They want them to talk. They want them to get along. They want them to solve problems. Why can't we have the same kind of balance right here in Oregon? I think a lot of people perhaps listening to your show right now, they don't feel like their interests have been represented. Maybe small business owners. Maybe people who work for small businesses. My opponent raised taxes and fees on small businesses 60 times in 5 years. And not just small businesses, but just the average Oregon voter.
And who benefited from those increases? Where does that money go?
Well, it goes to government. It goes to special interests, to prop them up. Crony capitalism, as it may be. And these are some of the issues that I think people have to look at very closely. On the other hand, what I did just recently is I released a jobs plan, some specifics on how we can create jobs in this market, in this whole region. Let me get very specific, if I may. The first thing we have to do is we have to create a simpler, more fair, and more predictable tax code in this country. And what I mean by that is, right now the tax code is about 10,000 pages thick of crazy loopholes that, frankly, are written by attorneys and only understood by people who can afford attorneys. Mega corporations, the super rich. Now, what is a loophole? It's a way for them to get out of paying taxes.
But your opponent's saying that that's who you're in favor of, Rob.
Well, again, she can say what she wants to say. But I have been from day one in this campaign saying there's no reason why the GEs of the world and other companies should be profiting off the tax code, and that's what they're doing. In fact, GE, to give that example, last year they made over $14 billion in profits, most of it, by the way, overseas, even though their chairman is President Obama's job czar, which is pretty ironic. But anyway, they made $14 billion in profits and paid 0 federal income tax last year. Now, you ask how many small businesses in Oregon are paying 0 federal income taxes. How many of the middle class are getting away with that? It's unfair. So I'm not saying that we eliminate all loopholes, all tax credits or deductions, but we have to return to a simpler, a fairer system. And by the way, Ann, this was done. It's been done in our past. We did it in 1997 with a Democrat president and a Republican Congress. We did it in the mid-'80s as well. this simplification. And what did it do back in the late 90s, for example, 1997 to be specific? Unemployment went down to 4%. We had a budget surplus, for heaven's sakes. Now we're running a $1.3 trillion deficit. And my opponent's only solution, which she continues to talk about, is let's cut or end the Bush tax cuts, as she calls them. Never mind that President Obama extended them. But let's end the Bush tax cuts. Okay, let's just take that at face value. Let's say we give it to her. We eliminate the Bush tax cuts. You know what that will lead to? $100 billion in new revenue. That sounds like a lot of money, but let's return to our deficit. $1.3 trillion. So if we eliminate the Bush tax cuts, we're still running a $1.2 trillion deficit. That would be the third highest in our country's history.
Well, and I think one of the things that people are tired of hearing over and over is, however you felt about Bush, you felt about Bush. However you felt about whoever, you felt about whoever. That's not what's happening right now. Present day life right now is what you're talking about. This is where we are. What do we need to do to get to job creation and solutions?
That's a very good point. See, what I find too much is going on with my opponent's talk is that she's rehashing issues that have been argued for the last 10 years with no resolution. I'd like to just start over with an entire overhaul of the tax system. And by the way, guess who else joins me on this? Senator Ron Wyden. I'm not saying he supports me, but this is what he's talking about in Washington. Now, he and I, we don't have a lot in common, admittedly, but this is one key area that we see eye to eye, that the tax code as it's currently set up is hurting our economy. Another thing that I think needs to be done to create jobs is we have to have someone in the 1st District who truly understands the value of trade. And we haven't had that here. Now, again, I mentioned in the previous segment, we're on the Pacific Rim. We have 3 port cities in this district. I mean, what a great asset. And we have terrific products and services that I believe the world wants. But they can't get them unless we have good agreements. Now, a good agreement is such that you have to require both sides to play by the rules. And your member of Congress is there to make sure that our local interests are being protected. So if China is cheating, then we have to make sure we go to the executive branch and we say, look, we have evidence here that China is cheating and it's hurting my local companies in my district. And you fight for that. So it's not trade at any cost, but it's providing more markets for Oregon businesses. Last year alone, we produced we have 268,000 jobs just in this region that are dependent on international trade. Just think what we could have if we were more aggressive and bold about spreading our products and services around the world.
Well, and said we're open for business.
It does. It says we're open for business. Well put. And I just got to say very quickly, the third thing is the federal government over time has to pass a balanced budget amendment. What does that say to the American people? It says we're going to be responsible with your tax dollars. It means we're going to show you where we're spending your money, as opposed to hiding the ball, which largely they do today, because the U.S. Senate hasn't passed a budget in over 960 days. What does that mean? That means they refuse to tell us how they're spending our money. They just willy-nilly keep going from continuing resolution to continuing resolution without any accountability. If you want to build confidence in the American consumer and American business and the investors who want to put money into this country, you have to show them that we know how to restrain ourselves physically, that we know how to be responsible. And you do that over time with a balanced budget.
One of the things I'm just hearing from you, Rob, is because you're going to have an office here on the North Coast when you become our congressman, you take this personally. You don't want to face people in my community and say, I'm sorry, we can't figure out how to balance the budget. That's not good enough for you.
It's, you know what? We require it on the state level. We require it in our offices and companies and warehouses, in our vineyards, in our farms, in our homes. Why don't we require it in our federal government?
Yeah, personally.
Yeah. We all, if you can't continue to swipe your credit card, Ann, and not pay it back, you're going to have some pretty sad consequences if you do that. But the federal government hasn't learned that lesson. Why? Because we have too many lawyers turned politicians who have no sense of accountability, who've never met a payroll before, who are too comfortable because they've got all these wonderful perks they built for themselves, And so they just keep billing the next generation.
Okay, we got to sign off this morning, but Rob, I want you to give some closing remarks in terms of how can people engage in change with your campaign?
First of all, go to cornillesforcongress.com. You'll find a lot of information there about me, my background, and more specifically the issues that I think are really hurting and facing Americans right now, and specifically Oregonians. And then if you believe in the things that I'm talking about, if you believe that we can't have more of the same, that we can't continue to reward the political machine that seems to determine elections, then I'd ask them to volunteer. I'd ask them to make a contribution. Help me get this message out. And because I'm competing with, Washington, D.C., the political insiders are spending $1 million to try to discredit me, trying to suggest to voters that a small business owner in Tualatin isn't what they need. They need another lawyer turned politician in this district. And I'm asking voters and your listeners to get engaged immediately. The election is on. It's game on now. There's no time to wait.
I have one personal thing that I'm going to throw in here. I'm the Oregon State volunteer for the Asbestos Disease Awareness Organization, and I shot you an email about this. We're working hard internationally to ban asbestos, and it's not banned in the United States. So when you're my congressman, I'm coming to you, and we want to talk about that and keeping people safe and keeping them healthy.
And your listeners can't see it right now, but she's pointing her finger in my chest.
I get it. I'm coming. I'm coming for you, Rob. We got to sign off this morning. Thanks for listening, and engage people. Get involved. Thank you. Have a great day.